You're now watching the Danny Mac Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Welcome back to the Danny Mac Podcast on the BetRivers Podcast Network. We're going to talk some Hall of Fame weekend stuff. The Bears opener against the Texans, all the enshrinements, 2.5 Bears, and a prolific Houston Texan went into the Hall of Fame. And we'll talk with a wide receiver about Andre Johnson. He is Amani Toomer. Hail to the victors and a member of Big Blue his entire NFL career. Amani, thanks for the time, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really having a good time.
It is great to talk to you. I don't think we've ever had the chance to do this. And as you mentioned before we started rolling, you didn't have a lot of games against the Bears, so we didn't have to do a lot of scouting on Jim Fossil in your early days there. And by the time you guys started winning Super Bowls later, the Bears were, we weren't talking much Bears. We were on to other things in Chicago.
The Bulls, you got a lot going on back in those days.
Yeah, we sure did. And I always love talking with guys who know what it's like to wake up one Sunday morning and realize when their feet hit the floor, I'm playing in the Super Bowl today. And you got a chance to do that a few times as well. Let's talk about wide receiver Andre Johnson, the first Houston Texan to get enshrined in Canton. And I loved all the younger dudes I heard over the weekend saying, well, he's the first big receiver. I don't remember. That comes with age, and I'm a few years older than you. Who was the first big guy you remember making a considerable difference week after week, largely because of his size?
Oh, it had to have been Michael Irvin. That was kind of the guy that I always thought I would be too tall to be a wide receiver, so I thought I was going to be a tight end coming out of high school. And then I realized, after Michael Irvin came out, and then there's a couple other, I think Sterling Sharp was another big receiver. Who else? Jake Reed was another big receiver when I was coming up.
I think of Herman Moore of the Lions when I think of my first big, thick guy.
Yeah, Herman Moore. Yeah, I actually played with Herman Moore. He played for the Giants for a couple of weeks and got his. But he was a great dude to play with out of University of Virginia. Yeah, I love Herman Moore.
He haunted the Bears for a number of years. It was bad enough they had to go against Favre and Sharp. They also had the Lions for a few years. Had some pretty good receivers as well. Well, finally, we have a receiver. We have 3 of them in Chicago. How much can you tell us about Odunze, the rookie, the 9th pick overall out of Washington, who is expected to, in very short order, break the Bears' all-time career receiving record, which is not very impressive?
I saw him I heard an interview of him on the Pivot podcast. I was really impressed with him. I really liked him. I really liked what he did at University of Washington. But it's so hard to translate what you do in college as a receiver over into the pros. It was like an entirely different game when I came out. I remember, we didn't have to call. We didn't have any responsibilities with the protection when I was at Michigan. And if the quarterback didn't point out, that somebody was blitzing, I wouldn't have to break off my route. So you go fast forward to the NFL, it's like you have to know by the count from the mic out to the secondary which person you're hot off, and the quarterback's not going to tell you. And if you don't if you don't give the quarterback an option when the blitz is coming, that's when they give you what you call a bus ticket. That's the bus ticket on the next thing smoking out of town if you get your quarterback hurt because he's holding on to the ball as you're missing your hot route.
Mm-hmm. When you came into the league in '96, I'm glad you brought this up because it was a slow start to your career as it was with Curtis Conway's. Now, he was a number 1 pick of the Bears in '93. You're a second rounder several years later. But I'm looking at the numbers the other day, and it's like very similar. And players he compares to, Curtis Conway is one of the first that comes up, but actually a very productive career for Seaway. But that Bears career receiving record, Amani Toomer, is dreadfully low. 5,059 yards. Johnny Morris, who played between 58 and 67. It's the limpest of all 32 teams' individual records. You were near 10,000 yards with the Giants, and there are 201 receivers in NFL history who did more for one team than Morris did here.
Wow, that is that's Well, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the conditions, right? Like, it's not all about the ability of the receivers. In Chicago, it's very windy. And if you don't have a quarterback that has an arm like a Brett Favre that can cut the ball through the wind, you're not going to have a consistent passing game. And plus, the game has changed in terms of how you look at a receiver. A receiver used to be a finishing piece. And now, you got Tariq Hill, the number one player voted by the players in the top NFL top 100. That's unheard of back in my day. So I just feel like, and then you have 17 games. I'm sure back then they had 14 games. So it's like, you got to dig into the numbers a little bit deeper and don't take them just at face value, because now, receivers are getting 100 catches plus, it just seems like ridiculous to me. But, the game is way more exciting to watch than the game that I played, I admitted. We used to run the ball a lot of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Now you got a lot of opportunities to see the best athletes on the field, the wide receivers, do what we do best.
I want, remind me if I forget to get back to that top 100 list. Somebody said about it the other day, because it wasn't on my list, but since you took it there, I got to get your thoughts on this. But why people are watching this on YouTube and why they're listening to it is because they saw over the weekend on social media, you had some unkind things to say about the Messiah, Caleb Williams, the number one. He's coming to rescue the Bears and throw those tight spirals in the winded Soldier Field.
Yeah.
What was it about his comments to the team regarding locker room cleanliness that you found so off-putting?
Well, I just felt like, I've been around a lot of young quarterbacks. I was part in developing young Eli Manning, and I just know what is important for a young quarterback. And what he has to do is not come in my opinion, is from my experience playing in the NFL for as long as that, for the 13 years, and seeing a whole bunch of guys come in and think that they're the Messiah and really don't pay homage to the players that have been there. I mean, being a Chicago Bear must be really hard. It's not fun when you're getting the first pick of the draft and everybody's talking about one person. There's a lot of guys on that team, and you have to win them over. They want to follow you. They want to be, they want you to be the best, because if you're the best, then that's going to help them win. But they don't want to hate you. And when you come off like follow me without them knowing you, it's a tough process to be a quarterback in the league, or a good player in the league, period, and be able to get along with everybody else in the locker room, because there's so much jealousy, there's so much envy, and the fact that he's making probably more than half the people in the locker room, it's just not a good look. You're going to come in, they're going to pay you all this money, everybody's talking about how great you are, and I hope he is great. Like, I'm not hating on Caleb Williams at all. I'm just hating on the attitude of that somebody can come in and just think that they're clean up the locker room. I thought that was just totally out of pocket. And if what a rookie should have done, in my opinion, you start cleaning up the locker room by yourself, and then just say, hey guys, for a couple days, and then people will look at you, and the people will be like, wait, what are you doing? And then you say, hey, look, I'm cleaning up this locker room. I feel like, we need to take has nothing to do with how I think about cleaning up after myself. Of course, every grown man cleans up after himself. That's natural. But to make it a point by being a rookie and not really having any real pelts on the wall, and I don't know how well he's doing in camp. I hear mixed reviews. I don't know if he's doing well. I don't know if he's doing bad. But all I know is that's what I should be learning more about, how he's doing in camp, as opposed to him telling people to clean up. That just seems really strange to me.
I think you might be among the guys he rubbed wrong even before he got here, because I heard the soundbite a couple of times from your show in New York with Carton, and the nail polish bugs you too, as it does a lot of former Bears I've talked to. Just I don't know if it's a generational thing, but
I remember when go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, is that part of it? I mean, did you at all go into this looking for flaws with him because you don't like him?
No, I don't know him. Like, how could I hate somebody I don't even know? I like what he does on the field. I just want I want for every young player, for their on the field performance to dictate, what people think of them. And if you want to, do all this other stuff, that's fine. But it has to show up on Sunday, and people just be like, oh, that's just good old, That's just good old Caleb and his nails. But until you get to that point, it's a little bit strange, and it is a generational thing. I remember when I was younger, I had earrings in my ear, and my dad, wasn't really happy with that. And now they got tattoos and all this stuff. It's a generational thing, and I don't have to understand it. I don't have to like it. It's strange to me, but what does he care what I think about his fingernails? Like, if it's good for him, let him do it.
That's, you know what? I love that statement. I don't have to understand it. I've been trying to practice that too as a 63-year-old man, because there's no way I'm going to get to some of this stuff. Jaylon Johnson, the Bears veteran cornerback now, 4 years on the team, and he just got a huge contract, issued the warning before, he even got here for OTAs regarding Caleb Williams. The Joe Hollywood Act won't fly here until you do something. So very similar to what, and I was thinking the same thing when people are talking about that deal they made with Carolina. Already, Chicago people are saying this rivals the Herschel Walker. And it's like, can we get him his first varsity letter first, please?
Yeah, no, and it's funny because if we're a little older, and we've seen this story many times. We've seen the quarterback, he's going to change the franchise. The Ryan Leafs, he has a really good story of perseverance, but there's a lot of quarterbacks that fail. And it's not because of they don't have the ability. They rub their teammates the wrong way. They rub their coaching staffs the wrong way. They get people fired. They get, like, RG3 should be in the league right now today. He's a guy who had a whole bunch of talent, but talent at the quarterback position isn't all the things. It's a position that it's art, more art than science. There's a lot of guys that can throw the ball and be accurate and all this stuff, but can you get guys to rally behind you? Can you get guys to believe in you? And telling them to clean up when you just haven't done anything is not going to get that. Not going to get that, that mesh, that happy medium where everybody on that Bears team, in my opinion, wants him to be what he is, but they don't want to, they're not going to bow down and kiss the ring to somebody they haven't even known anything about. It's one of these things where you have to earn your stripes in the NFL, and I just don't want him to let all the field stuff derail his career. I want him to have a great career. I don't hate Caleb Williams. Why would I hate him? I have no reason to hate a young player trying to make his career. I'm all for him. I'm a supporter. I'm not a detractor. I just know where pitfalls lie, and I don't want any of these things to be one of his pitfalls.
I'm not around it very often. All reports are he's fit in well. He's been one of the guys, and everybody is very happy with his work ethic. So much more has to play out on this. But
well, that's great.
Yeah. So hopefully it goes the Bears' way. And what I wanted to say about the top 100 list, back to Jaylon Johnson, the Bears corner.
Yeah.
Man, Amani, last year is his third year in the league. And the Bears were 1-5 at home with the Raiders. They hadn't won a home game in like 400 days. And he picks off Brian Hoyer and does the show me the money mechanic in the end zone. Yeah. And I'm like, this is his third or fourth career interception. He got another one off Aiden O'Connell, who I think I could have intercepted. And he's doing that, and he's issuing warnings. There's a guy who's been in the league 4 years now. This is year 4. And he's still talking way above what he's produced. And I think he runs a risk of putting people off, too, if he keeps going. He was upset he wasn't on the top 100 list. And he says, guys never, they don't throw at me. Well, right, they never threw at Deion Sanders, and he got to more than 50. The Woodsons, Rod and Charles got to more than 50. I could keep going, guys you played against who got to 50, who quarterbacks tried to avoid. Shut up and catch the football, dude.
But, one thing you don't realize is that corners don't deal in reality. Like, they don't. They get beat so often that they have to kind of have this persona beyond what they are. And so when you're around the locker room, which I know you have been, you got to understand that's just how, I never take what corners say as base value because they get beat. Like, the corner is like, he'll get beat. I remember playing against corners. I'd have 100 and some yards in the first half or whatever. And then in the third quarter, they'd knock a ball away for some reason. And then they'd get up and they'd do all the celebration. I'm like, yo, you didn't just see the first 3 quarters that me cooking you? But that's just kind of how the mentality is. So when you start seeing that, you just kind of take it with a grain of salt. And a corner without confidence is a safety, right? You got to have confidence to be a corner. So I don't think you'd want to neuter any corner. You want your corners to be not based in, because corners can't go in the tank mentally. And if you have all that confidence, you won't. Your confidence won't let you get that way. So I look at corners that way.
I love it. That's a good sign for the corner's meeting room. If a corner who isn't confident is a safety, I like that. That's really good. Hey, Super Bowl 35 in Tampa. It's good to see a Ball State Cardinal get his name in the Super Bowl record books because I'm a proud Ball Stater. Brad Maynard still hasn't. No one's kicked much. He had 11 punts in that game. That Ravens defense, man. You guys had no chance that day in a 34-7 loss. Did you have a suspicion going into the week it was going to be a tough putt given how strong they were on both sides of the ball?
Absolutely not. I felt to this day that our coaching staff was the reason why our game plan was totally changed. We went down to the game there. It was 2 weeks between. We went down there. We had our game plan all set. Then we have like the little week off, the media day. Then we come back. Our game plan is different. We did stuff that was our staples through the entire season. And then for the Super Bowl, we didn't go with the girl that brought us to the dance, with the plays that we did the entire season that we perfected. And all of a sudden we just checked off stuff that we always did. And it was really, we were disjointed. And when you're disjointed as an offense, and you're playing against the defensive caliber that they had, that's what happens. You punt the ball 11 times. But I felt like we left a lot on the table, and you can't tell me that team was as dominant against us if we would have, of course, if and buts is what kills athletes. But that's one of the things that I always, when I look back at that game, I just like, what if we would have just did what we ordinarily did throughout the entire season that made us one of the better offenses in the league, and just stuck with what we got.
Yeah, no touchdowns for the offense. Ron Dixon's kick return, the only touchdown of the day. And it was back-to-back, too, with Jermaine Lewis. I'm a student of Super Bowl kick returns for a touchdown. I love that. But,
yeah.
And Devin Hester going into the Hall of Fame. You returned a lot of punts. How about it?
Yep.
The Hall finally recognizes a kick return specialist.
Yeah, there has to be a more kick return specialist. There has to be more kickers. There has to be more like, the position is not, the positions in the Hall of Fame are very slanted towards the offensive line. And now recently it's like receivers are getting in more, and there's got to be more. I think the diversity of the positions has to be more, because it doesn't seem right that there's not any kickers. And half of the games in the NFL come down to 3 points at the end of the game, and there's no kickers in. It just doesn't make any sense to me, or very few kickers in.
Yeah, specialists have been ignored for hardware forever. I mean, Charles Woodson at Michigan a few years after you were gone had to become a return man to get the Heisman. He wouldn't have won that award if he didn't get recognized as a returner.
Yeah. I mean, that's why there's two different footballs. There's a football where amongst like, the community, where we understand and we recognize all the different positions and we appreciate all of them. And then there's the media perception of football, where it's basically quarterback, wide receiver, pass rusher and all that stuff. But there's a whole different side of football that is very underrepresented. But the game is just so much fun to watch, and whichever aspect you're looking at it, I just can't get enough of it.
Michigan won another national championship. Jim Harbaugh leaves to take the Chargers job. How do you think he'll do this second run in the NFL?
I think he'll do well. It's just a matter of how long will they give him to do well. That's my only thing about Jim Harbaugh. Michigan almost let him go too early, and would have missed out on this magical season that we had this year. So I think most coaches will, if they have the right pieces and the right kind of attitude and trying to get people to motivate, I think he'll do well. I think he needs to change little things, because when he was not very well welcomed after he left San Francisco, even though they were a very successful team, and dealing with college players and dealing with pro players is totally different. Hopefully he's learned how to do that, and hopefully he has a great career. I'm a guy who I want everybody to do well. I just see the pitfalls, and I'm not going to sit there and say, I'm not going to, let somebody spit in my face and tell me it's rain. I just told the truth like I see it.
What did you hear about how he handled his 49ers players a few years ago that you hope he learned from?
Well, I played with Brandon Jacobs, and Brandon Jacobs absolutely hates Jim Harbaugh. Like, he absolutely hates him. And I also played with Mario Manningham, who didn't have very favorable things to say about him as well. So it's just one of these things where, you got to find a way to you don't have to have the players like you, but they have to have them respect you and not hate you. Because I remember I played for Tom Coughlin early on before he went through his kind of metamorphosis. And I remember we lost the game to the Cincinnati Bengals. And we walked, it was like a last minute, they had a last minute drive and they beat us. A player came up to me and was like, man, I hate that we lost. And he goes, but I'm glad that he lost. And it's one of those things where I was like, yo, we are all on the same page. But if you get that fracturing in the locker room, it's very hard to put back together. But luckily, Tom Coughlin was able to do it, and we were able to win a Super Bowl.
I haven't talked to Harbaugh in many years, but I thought early on, as much as he is such a relentless hard worker, he's probably got the type of personality that would be very short-lived in any given place. And he has he's shuffled his shoes along the way, winning everywhere. But I suspect he's just too into Jim Harbaugh to last a real long time in any organization. Do you get that impression as well?
I was surprised that he stayed as long as he did in Michigan because, the old thing was he'd stay one place for 5 years and go on. And he's never really won in the NFL. He's lost a Super Bowl in the NFL. He's won a championship in college. And that's pretty much, that's pretty much it. He's had a lot of winning teams, but there's a difference between a winning coach and a Super Bowl winning coach. And so I want him to win a Super Bowl, but he hasn't done that yet. But he has had a lot of success.
We got a lot of viewers and listeners in Michigan. Who are the former teammates, alums who you still have relationships with? You want to throw a shout out to for the Big Blue fans before we spring you on?
I talked to my buddy Zach Freeman is a guy I still talk. I text a little bit to. Rod Payne is a guy I talk to. Jared Irons is a guy I talk to. A couple other guys that I can't think of off the top of my head, but I didn't really stay that close in touch with a lot of the players out of Michigan after I got done.
You don't send Tim Biakabatuka a Christmas card or anything?
No, I haven't seen him in a long time. I haven't seen Mercury Hayes in a long time.
Mercury Hayes. Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's why we do these interviews, to resurrect some old names of eras gone by. Yeah. Mercury. How about raise you with John Colasar, the fastest white guy in the Michigan history, number 40. It's
funny. I ran into a guy who knew him, and he met him at some sort of business conference, and he sent out a picture of him to me, and we chatted back and forth a little bit on text. But I haven't really seen a lot of those guys.
Amani, thanks a bunch for the visit. Continued success with your radio career in New York, man. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
That's Amani Toomer with many thoughts on this NFL. Thank you so very much for listening and watching the Danny Mac podcast. For those of you who are doing that on YouTube, you can subscribe very easily. It's free. Thanking Sam Michael, the executive producer, and Randy Merkin for getting us all of our A-list guests. Adam Delavitt runs the show. He's Baby Capone. I'm Danny Mac. More football around the corner on these podcasts. Stick around.